Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. Today, we're tackling a feeling that I think pretty much everyone listening has felt at some point.
Oh, absolutely. I know I have.
Right. It's that specific, really heavy, sinking feeling in your stomach when you look at a textbook or you open one of those language apps.
And that little voice starts talking.
Exactly. The voice in your head that whispers, "You missed the boat. You're just too old for this."
It is the classic, I'm not a toddler anymore, so I'm doomed syndrome. It's incredibly pervasive.
It really is. We have
Yeah.
this massive cultural narrative that says if you didn't learn French or Spanish or Japanese when you were, 3 years old.
Back when your brain was a sponge.
Yeah, the sponge brain. If you missed that, you are destined to sound like a clumsy, stumbling tourist for the rest of your life. It feels like the door is just locked tight.
But today we are going to look at a stack of research that suggests that door isn't just unlocked. It might actually be wide open. And that is exactly what we're going to get into. We have a great lineup of sources for you. We've got some classic theory from Stephen Krashen.
Who was essentially the godfather of second language acquisition.
Right. And we also pulled some recent studies from Frontiers in Psychology that directly challenge the whole biological limits of the adult brain idea.
Plus, we've got that incredible brain imaging research from Georgetown University regarding immersion.
That one honestly blew my mind. And finally, some very validating psychological reports on foreign language classroom anxiety. So the mission for this deep dive is to prove that as an adult, you aren't just capable of learning.
You might actually be incredibly efficient at it.
Exactly. And this is a massive if you stop trying to learn like a school child.
I think that's the perfect place to start, because we all carry this baggage of the critical period hypothesis.
The big scary monster in the room.
It really is. It's haunted adult learners for decades. It basically says there's this biological window, and it usually ends around puberty.
And once you hit that age, boom.
The window slams shut. Your brain's plasticity for language just withers away. The neural circuitry dissolves, and you're left with a brain that just cannot do it anymore.
It's basically the use it or lose it idea, but applied to your entire ability to pick up grammar. And I mean, it sounds convincing because kids really do seem to learn effortlessly.
They do seem to. But the data doesn't actually back up this hard deadline. Let's look at the study by Ewa Dabrowska. It's titled, "Is Adult Second Language Acquisition Defective?"
That's a very blunt title.
It is. She decided to test this head-on. She didn't rely on anecdotes. She took adult learners, some from traditional classrooms and some from immersion environments, and she tested their grammar against native speakers.
And usually this is the part where the adults get absolutely crushed, right?
That is the expectation, yeah. We assume the native speakers will score 100% and the adults will be trailing way, way behind.
So what did she actually find?
The findings were shocking. Depending on the specific grammar task, between 33% and 91% of the adult learners performed within the native speaker range.
Wait, hold on a second. 91%?
Up to 91%, yes.
You're saying almost all of them were indistinguishable from native speakers on certain tasks.
On some tasks, the overlap was massive. And even on the absolute hardest tasks she gave them, a significant chunk, about a third, were performing at a native level.
Wow.
Now think about what that means. If the adult brain were truly defective, or if that window was nailed shut by biology like we've been told.
You just wouldn't see that kind of overlap.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You would see a hard ceiling that adults simply couldn't break through.
Yeah.
But they did break through.
That is a huge blow to the biology is destiny argument. But I kind of have to play devil's advocate here.
Go for it.
Because I know what the listener is thinking right now, and honestly, I'm thinking it too. If adults are so highly capable, why does it feel so incredibly slow? I mean, a 5-year-old moves to a new country, and 3 months later, they are chatting away on the playground like it's nothing. I study for 3 months, and I can barely order a coffee without sweating through my shirt. It feels like wading through mud.
This is the crucial point where we confuse biology with environment. It is not about brain cells. It's about math.
Math.
Yes, we have to look at the hours of exposure.
Okay, break down the numbers for us, because I really feel like I put in a lot of time.
Well, let's do a reality check on that time. Consider a 30-year-old native speaker. By the time they hit 30, assuming they're awake and hearing language for about 8 hours a day.
Like parents talking, TV, school, friends, all of that.
Exactly. They have had roughly 87,600 hours of exposure to their language.
87,000 hours.
It is an ocean of data. Now look at the struggling adult learner in Dabrowska's study,
Yep.
even the ones who had been studying for a few years. The researchers estimated these adults had about 2,000 to 2,500 hours of instruction or exposure.
2,000.
Right, so we are comparing 87,000 hours versus 2,000 hours.
Oh, wow. When you frame it like that, calling the adult slow is actually completely unfair.
It's entirely unfair.
We're taking someone who has practiced for 2,000 hours and holding them to the standard of someone who has practiced for nearly 90,000 hours.
Precisely. Despite having less than 3% of the exposure, a third of those adults were performing at near native levels.
That's actually an incredible efficiency victory.
It really is. It's not a biological failure at all. You are learning faster than a child does per hour of exposure. You are doing more with less.
That completely flips the script. It's not that my brain is broken, it's just that I haven't put in the massive volume of time yet. I'm sitting here expecting the results of a marathon when I've barely won a 5K.
Exactly. But there's another factor we have to address. Because even if I tell you that you are mathematically efficient, it doesn't change the actual experience.
The experience of sitting in a classroom, the teacher points at you, asks a question, and your mind just goes totally blank.
Oh, yes. The freeze.
It's absolute terror. It doesn't feel efficient in that moment. It just feels like pure panic.
And that is the silent killer of language learning right there.
Oh.
It isn't intelligence, it's anxiety.
Let's talk about that because we pulled a great paper by Horowitz and colleagues on something called foreign language classroom anxiety.
Yes, and it's important to note this is actually distinct from general anxiety. It is highly specific to the language learning situation.
So it's not just regular nervousness.
No, it's a complex set of self-perceptions, beliefs, and feelings related specifically to the classroom. The researchers interviewed students to really get a sense of what this feels like on the inside.
And there was a quote in there that I just loved. Well, I hated it because I related to it so much.
The Martian death ray quote?
Yes. A
Okay.
student actually told the researchers, I feel like my French teacher is some kind of Martian death ray.
Which perfectly captures the dread.
It really does. You feel like you're under a microscope. Everyone is judging you. Every mistake is a public catastrophe.
And Horowitz points out the physical symptoms of this. Freezing in class, completely forgetting grammar points you definitely know, overstudying but still failing the test. It creates a vicious cycle.
Right, because you get anxious, so you avoid practicing, and because you avoid practicing, you don't improve.
And because you don't improve, you feel even more anxious the next time. It feeds itself.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And this connects directly back to Stephen Krashen's theories, right? Because I know he talks a lot about the emotional side of learning.
He does, and it's something a lot of people ignore because they just want the quick hacks. He coined the term the affective filter.
The affective filter. So what exactly is that?
Think of it like a literal wall in your brain, or a gatekeeper. When your anxiety is high, or your self-esteem is low, or your motivation drops, that filter goes up.
The gate closes.
The gate closes. And when that happens, even if you are listening to great French or Spanish input, that input literally cannot reach the language acquisition device in your brain.
So I'm hearing the noise. My ears are working fine. The sound waves are hitting my eardrums. But my brain just isn't processing it as language.
You hear it, but you don't acquire it. It just bounces right off the wall.
You know, this explains something I've always wondered about.
The liquid courage phenomenon.
Yes, I was totally going to bring that up. People always say they speak a foreign language so much better after a glass of wine. I always thought maybe I was just imagining I sounded better.
Well, obviously, too much wine does the opposite. But a single glass doesn't make you smarter or magically improve your vocabulary. What it does is it temporarily lowers the affective filter.
You stop caring about the Martian death ray.
Exactly. You stop worrying about looking foolish, and suddenly the language you already know just flows out because the block is gone. The input can finally get in, and the output can finally get out.
That makes an incredible amount of sense. So we know we have these efficient adult brains, but our own anxiety blocks us from using them. So the big question then becomes, how do we actually learn best? Because most of us just default to the way we learned in high school.
Which is grammar drills, vocabulary lists, sitting in rows.
Staring at a whiteboard while someone lectures about verb conjugations.
And that method might actually be the root of the problem. That traditional approach often raises the affective filter.
Let's bring in that study from Georgetown University by Ullman and Morgan Short. They looked at exactly this, immersion versus classroom learning.
And they took it a step further. They actually scanned people's brains to see what was happening inside.
I found the study absolutely fascinating because they didn't just teach them Spanish or French. That would be too easy.
Right. They had to ensure absolutely no one had a head start. So they created a completely miniature, made-up language called Brocanto.
Brocanto, which only had 13 words, right?
Just 13 words. It was based on a computer game, but it had very specific, complex grammar rules, just like a real human language.
Okay, so they split these adult learners into two groups.
Yes. Group A learned Brocanto exactly like a traditional classroom.
Hmm.
Lots of explicit grammar explanations, rules. This is a noun, this is how you conjugate the verb.
Very analytical. Here's the rule, now apply it to the worksheet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Group B, on the other hand, learned via immersion. They just sat down and played the computer game.
So no rules.
No explicit rule explanations at all. They just saw examples of the language being used to make moves in the game, and they had to figure it out organically by playing.
And what happened? Did the classroom group win? Because honestly, if you gave me the rule book, I'd assume I'd crush the test compared to someone just guessing.
Well, on the surface, they both learned the language.
Hmm.
If you gave them a written test at the end, they both passed. They could both successfully use Brocanto.
Okay, so a tie.
Not at all. Because when they looked at the fMRI brain scans, the two groups were using completely different parts of their brains.
The result was the same, but the internal process was totally different.
Completely different. The immersion group, the ones who just played the game, developed neural processing patterns that were identical to native speakers.
Wow.
They were processing Brocanto as a language. The classroom group, however, was processing it more like a math problem or a logic puzzle.
Because they learned it as a set of rules.
Exactly. They were using their declarative memory, which is the memory for facts, not their procedural memory, which is the memory for automatic skills.
So immersion literally rewires the adult brain to treat the new language like a native tongue. That is wild. It's basically the difference between knowing how to drive a car instinctively and just knowing a bunch of facts about how a combustion engine works.
That is a brilliant analogy. And for actual speaking, you need that procedural memory. You need it to be automatic. But there was a twist in this Georgetown study that I found even crazier.
Oh yes, the consolidation surprise.
Right.
I had to reread this section of the paper twice because I didn't believe it the first time.
So they brought the participants back 5 months later. Now, keep in mind, these people had not practiced Brocanto at all for 5 months. Zero exposure.
You would expect them to have forgotten absolute everything. 5 months is a long time. I forget people's names 5 minutes after meeting them.
You would expect significant decay in their ability. But the brain scans showed something else entirely. Their brains had actually become more native-like during that 5-month break.
That is so deeply counterintuitive. You're saying they got better by doing literally nothing?
In terms of neural processing, yes. It's a biological process called consolidation. It's very similar to what happens when you learn to ride a bike or play a musical instrument.
Your brain works on it while you sleep.
Exactly. Your brain continues to process and organize that new skill in the background, even when you aren't actively doing it. The break didn't erase the progress. The break solidified it.
That has to be incredibly reassuring for anyone listening who feels guilty about taking a weekend off from their flashcards. I know I always feel like if I miss a single day, I'm sliding backward into the abyss.
You're really not. The neural connections are tightening up.
But this massive difference between the group that analyzed the rules and the group that just played the game, it really highlights a fundamental distinction that Stephen Creation makes.
Yes, the difference between learning and acquisition.
Let's unpack this for the listener because he uses these two words in very specific technical ways, and I think we mix them up constantly in daily conversation.
We do. For Creation, learning is conscious. It is knowing the rules. It's being able to explicitly state, that is the subjunctive tense.
Which is what we mostly do in high school and college. It's purely academic knowledge.
Right. Acquisition, on the other hand, is subconscious. It is exactly what children do. It's picking up the language from context.
You don't know the rule, you just know that it sounds right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Creation argues that real conversational fluency, the kind where you aren't mentally translating every single word in your head, that only comes from acquisition. It never comes from learning.
He has this concept of the monitor, right? Which I feel is personally attacking me every single time I try to speak Spanish.
The monitor is basically your internal editor. When you learn a language through conscious rules, like the classroom group in the Georgetown study, you use those rules to monitor your own speech.
So before you say anything, you're checking it. Is this the right conjugation? Is the gender correct? Wait, is the table L or a law?
Exactly. And while you are furiously checking your internal rule book, the conversation has completely moved on. And you were just standing there silently, looking slightly confused.
Been there. many times. Overusing the monitor just causes total hesitancy. You're so busy checking the rules that you physically cannot communicate.
Acquisition completely bypasses the monitor. You just speak because it feels right to your brain.
So how do we actually acquire instead of learn? If we can't just regress and go be babies again, what do we do as adults? How do we replicate that immersion group without a custom computer game and an MRI machine?
Gratian has a very simple formula for this. It's I+1.
I+1. Okay, what does that stand for?
It stands for comprehensible input. So the I is your current level of understanding, what you know right now.
And the +1?
The +1 is just a little bit more. It's new words or new grammar structures that you don't explicitly know, but you can understand them from context.
So we acquire language only when we understand messages, not when we memorize lists.
Right.
There was a really great example in the reading about a shoe and a cigarette. Can you walk us through that? It really visualized the whole concept for me.
Gladly. Krashen describes this demonstration lesson where he speaks entirely in German to an English-speaking audience. In the first version of the lesson, he just babbles about abstract grammar rules in German.
He's saying meaningful things, but because the students don't know any German, it's just pure noise.
Exactly. High anxiety, zero learning. The affective filter is straight up. It's just Charlie Brown teacher noises to them. But in the second version, he doesn't switch to English. He stays in German. But he physically points to his shoe, and he says the German word for sure. Then he draws a picture of a cigarette on the board. He acts out smoking. He asks the audience, do you have a cigarette?
And even though he hasn't translated a single word into English, you understand the message perfectly because of the context.
The gestures, the drawings, the acting. You understand the message. Oh, he's talking about his shoe.
And because you understand the message, your brain acquires the German word for shoe without you ever trying to actively memorize it.
That is I+1 in action.
Yeah.
You understood the message, so the language naturally tagged along for the ride. That is exactly how adults need to learn. Focus purely on the message, not the form.
If you understand the story, you're acquiring the language.
Precisely.
This leads us perfectly into the practical side of things, because we have this great article from Fluency Finds called Why Most Adults Fail. And the stats in there are pretty grim. Something like 95% of adults fail to reach fluency.
It is a scary number. But when you look at the 7 problems they list for why people fail, it's basically a checklist of everything we've just been discussing today.
Unrealistic expectations using school methods, and a really huge one, perfectionism.
The perfectionism one really resonates with high-achieving adults.
It does, because as adults, we are highly competent people. We're experts in our jobs. We know how to pay our taxes and drive cars and navigate the world. It physically hurts the ego to suddenly be totally unable to say a simple phrase like, I want water.
It's a massive status drop. We absolutely hate feeling like beginners again, so we try to be perfect. We try to use our powerful, analytical adult brains to quote-unquote solve the language like it's a math problem just to avoid looking stupid.
But you can't solve a language.
No, you have to live in it.
So what's the actual fix for this? The Fluency Finds article lists 5 core principles. What stands out to you as the most actionable advice for someone listening right now?
The first one is micro goals. You have to completely forget the word fluency. Fluency is way too big, it's vague, it's totally overwhelming.
It's like stepping outside and saying, I'm going to be an Olympic athlete when you haven't even bought running shoes yet.
Exactly. Aim for something like, I want to learn 10 food words this week, or I want to understand this one specific 5-minute YouTube video. These are actually achievable.
And they give you those little dopamine hits that keep you motivated to come back tomorrow.
Right. Another principle I really like is communication over perfection.
Now, I have to be honest, I struggle with this one heavily.
Why is that?
Well, the article uses this example sentence. I go store yesterday. Now, grammatically, that is a complete train wreck. As a perfectionist, it physically hurts my ears to even say it out loud. Shouldn't we be desperately trying to correct that?
Let me ask you this. Here's the ultimate litmus test. If you say, I go store yesterday to a native speaker, do they know what you mean?
Well, yes. They obviously know you went to the store yesterday.
Then you have successfully communicated. You won. The grammar, the perfect past tense conjugation, that will come naturally later with more input.
But if I wait until I can say, I went to the store yesterday, completely perfect.
You might never speak at all. You will be entirely trapped by the monitor. You're silencing yourself while you wait for perfection.
That makes a lot of sense. Stop waiting for perfect.
Exactly. Another crucial tip from the article was schedule hacking.
Which goes right back to the exposure hours we talked about earlier.
Right. You do not have 8 hours a day to sit around listening to language like a baby does.
Mm.
But you definitely have 15 minutes on your morning commute. You have 10 minutes while you're sitting in the waiting room at the dentist.
And the research really suggests that frequency beats intensity here, right?
100%. Doing 15 to 30 minutes daily is vastly superior to doing one massive 4-hour cram session on Sunday afternoon.
Because it keeps the brain primed.
It keeps that neurological consolidation process running in the background, just like we saw in the Georgetown study. If you only interact with the language once a week, you're going to spend half of your Sunday just relearning what you forgot since last week.
My absolute favorite tip from the list, though, was connect to interests. What they call subject matter teaching.
Oh, this is the absolute game changer. Do not read a boring textbook dialogue about John and Mary going to the library to check out a book. Nobody cares about John and Mary.
Right.
If you love cooking, read actual recipes in Spanish. If you're obsessed with soccer, go watch the game commentary in Portuguese.
Because when you do that, you are entirely focused on the message. You're trying to figure out the recipe or who scored the goal. You aren't thinking about the grammar at all.
And that lowers the affective filter because you
Yeah.
actually really want to know what they're saying. You are getting that comprehensible input, the I+1, and you are acquiring the language completely subconsciously.
It literally hits every single requirement for effective learning that we've talked about today. You bypass the part of your brain that wants to analyze the rules, and you go straight to the part that processes meaning.
Exactly.
So if we pull all of this together, what does this really mean for the listener right now who is staring at that textbook feeling completely defeated?
It means you need to stop beating yourself up. You have all the cognitive tools you need. Your adult brain is incredibly efficient. You are actually a learning Ferrari, but you've been driving around with the parking brake securely pulled up.
And the break is the anxiety.
The brake is your anxiety. It's your perfectionism. And it's your insistence on analyzing dry grammar rules instead of consuming engaging content that you actually enjoy.
I love that analogy. Take the handbrake off. Go watch a movie, read a comic book, talk like a caveman if you have to. Just say, I ghost store yesterday. Just get the input in.
And trust the process.
Yeah.
Trust that your brain is actively doing the work in the background.
Speaking of doing the work in the background, this leads to something really interesting. I want to leave everyone listening with a provocative thought based on that Georgetown study.
The 5-month consolidation study.
Yes. Because we always feel this intense guilt when we take a break. We feel like we are being lazy. We live in this relentless hustle culture where if you aren't grinding every single day, you are failing.
Oh,
But if the Georgetown study is right, and the brain actually consolidates language patterns during periods of rest, maybe that guilt is entirely misplaced.
go on.
Well, maybe stepping back for a few days or even taking a full week off isn't quitting. Maybe it is literally part of the neurological work required to turn learning into acquisition.
That is a very liberating thought.
Right. Maybe you aren't slacking off. You're just letting the cement dry.
Resting isn't a lack of work. It is a necessary phase of the work. Just like your muscles physically need rest after the gym to grow stronger, your brain might need periods of silence after heavy input to actually consolidate the language.
I think we all really needed to hear that rest is part of the process, so drop the guilt. Thank you so much for diving deep with us today.
It was an absolute pleasure.
Don't forget to check out the channel Daily English Practice. See you in the next deep dive.